Hello, I'm Jeff Paur, senior writer with RealTime Fantasy Sports, and welcome to another edition of the RealTime Fantasy Sports Show. On today's show, Logan Glaser and we're going to talk about the NFL schedule that was released this week. We're going to look at it from a fantasy perspective, though. We're going to talk about all the teams and their strength of schedule when it comes to each position. So it's a good thing to delve into before you set your rankings, before you draft. So we thought it'd be a lot of fun. Like I said, Logan Glaser is going to join me today. Logan, as always, I really appreciate you coming on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Jeff. Each year, the schedule's a little bit unique. This year, we've got games on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. We've got every day except Tuesday for football games scheduled at some point in the week.
It's NFL all the time here. Now they're going to make a big deal about the schedule release. They never used to do that. They have a show about it. It's kind of crazy, but it's where we are now. NFL's king.
Yeah, it's kind of fun seeing the teams release their schedules. Each team does it a different way. So it's kind of fun watching those. There was a Sims version of the schedule.
Oh, that Chargers one was classic. If you have not watched it, you have to watch it. There is all sorts of stuff embedded in that video that you have to look closely at. It is hilarious. They did a great job with it.
Yeah, definitely a fun point for the schedule.
The Tennessee Titan one is good too. Did you watch that one?
Yeah, I watched that one.
Yeah, that one's pretty good too. I suggest watching that. Just search up on their X pages and you can see all the schedule releases on there. Some of them better than others. Chicago Bears did a Ferris Bueller spoof as well with DJ Moore as the Ferris character. Really good job though about all these social media teams. Kudos to the Chargers. That was unbelievable. We want to talk quickly about bye weeks before we get into each position and the fantasy strength of schedule for them. So bye weeks start in week 5 and they go all the way until week 14. So that's kind of something to keep an eye on. Don't you think, Logan?
Yeah, for sure. And week 14 is definitely the big one to kind of circle because that is when our TFFC and TFC first week playoffs start. So there's 6 teams on a bye. So that's definitely going to play a big factor into that. Those teams are Baltimore, Denver, Texans, Indianapolis, Patriots, and Commanders. Baltimore and Texans are the 2 huge teams that kind of stand out of those teams on a bye. Lots of impactful fantasy players on both of those teams.
For sure. I don't think I'm just going to completely fade them because of that, but just make sure if you take one of those players, you get quality backups at that position. Obviously, you want quality backups everywhere. Maybe you go a round or 2 early if you take Lamar Jackson, want to get a better backup quarterback to fill in for that bye in week 14 if you're playing one of these big game contests. So it's definitely something that I would keep an eye on. And Logan, also, before we get into that, let's talk about the TFC. Drafts are going off right now for sure. If you want to get in a draft, chance to win $500,000. We have drafts going off around the clock. It's never too early to get in them. Drafts have picked up, especially after this NFL draft has taken place. So tell everybody about the TFC a little bit.
Yeah, with that TFC, we're filling about 5 to 6 drafts a week currently with that. About 4 live drafts and a couple slow drafts each week with that. First place in the TFC wins $500,000. So that is just a mega first prize with that. And then you also get individual league prizes as well, along with overall prizes after first place with that. So first place wins $1,000 in your league. Second gets $400. Third gets $200 with that. So $1,600 total in league prizes. So it's definitely the top contest, the most popular contest on our site. So definitely go ahead and check that out. There's also a 3-pack discount, so 3 teams for $850. So you can save $50 on that.
Yeah, TFC is a lot of fun. Also, a lot of other contests on our site. Our Best Ball Championship, our RTFFC. We have All-American games. We have high-stake games. We have Best Ball. We have new format with just touchdowns as well, which is a lot of fun. Maybe we'll do one of those drafts live on one of these shows with some people from our company.
Yeah. That's a unique because you can only choose 1 player per NFL team. So say I go out and choose Patrick Mahomes in the second round.
Travis Kelce's gone.
Kelce's gone. No one can select Travis Kelce. No one can get Rashid Rice. No one can get any other Chiefs players. So they are completely taken off the board. So there's a lot of strategy in that. Usually the last thing you get ends up with a Panthers player. That's kind of how
Yeah, definitely interesting. A lot of fun. Go to rtsports.com and click on that Money League link. See all the games we have to offer on there. So let's delve into this strength of schedule now. We're going to look at each position. I calculated the numbers using our fantasy defenses page on our site to come up with the most favorable and unfavorable schedules for each team when it comes to fantasy positions. So we'll look at the QB one first. I did the top 5 at each one. So if it's 1 through 5, that's the toughest. The lowest is 32 through 28. So if you look at the toughest for fantasy quarterback, I actually have the playoff one up there erroneously. It should just be the regular one. So this is the regular season schedule. So top 5. So the Dolphins, Bengals, Chargers, Broncos, and Steelers. Top 5 toughest schedules. What jumps out to you there, Logan?
Definitely the Dolphins at number one. They are also ranked in the top 5 for the playoff strength of the schedule. So that is just a little bit concerning if you're going to go out and take the Dolphins with that. We'll see them also later on with wide receiver strength of schedule being on the top difficult. And they've got a lot of assets on that passing offense with Tua. You got Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle. So there's a little bit concerned. I don't play too much of a factor into the strength of schedule. I kind of just take it week by week. But if there's 2 players that are about even in my ADP, I will look at their schedule and playoff matchups in terms of that if I'm going to choose one player over another.
Yeah, for sure. A couple things that stand out to me. I like Joe Burrow this year, so I'm not too scared about this quarterback strength of schedule. But Justin Herbert, he scared me to begin with. Now he has the 3rd toughest quarterback strength of schedule. He has no receivers to work with for the most part. I know they drafted some players there, but still, I was worried about him even before this. Now I see this. That scares me even more. Broncos, too. Bo Nix, he's probably going to be thrown in the mix, thrown in the fire there to start right away. That's a concern having this tough schedule. And the Steelers, Russell Wilson, Justin Fields, maybe those guys are going to be on a short leash and, going back and forth there. So that's a little bit concern for me as well. So let's look at the opposite end of things. Teams with the easiest schedule. So the Packers have the easiest, then the Panthers, Titans, Bears, Cowboys, Jordan Love, easiest quarterback schedule out there. What's your thoughts on the easiest schedules now?
Yeah, I'm high on Jordan Love this year. He finished the season very strong last year. He's still going a little bit later in drafts than some of those top QBs, but he's kind of in the upper tier of the middle pack. So he's definitely a guy that I'm going to be high on this year, and even more so after the schedule release, giving him the easiest quarterback strength of schedule for the season.
Yeah, for sure. I like Love a lot. I think he could end up being top 5 before it's all said and done. That team was peaking at the end of the season. Bryce Young kind of intrigues me as well with the Panthers. Had a terrible year last year. He had no help, though. They had no separation at receiver. Now they have Deontay Johnson, then Leggetti. I think that's how you pronounce his name. I don't know if it's Leggett or Leggetti. It's the rookie, though, and he's highly touted. So they add some playmakers, added some offensive line as well. So I might take a chance on him, especially in best ball leagues late. Will Levis, too, another team that really upgraded at receiver this offseason, added Calvin Ridley. So that's exciting. Then you have Caleb Williams. They did all they could to surround him with talent. He has an easy schedule for quarterbacks, so I think that's really intriguing as well. And then Dak Prescott, too, had a big season last year. They don't have much help at running back. They have Ezekiel Elliott. Man, they could be pass heavy. This is a favorable schedule, too. Any other thoughts before we move on?
Team. There's a lot of when you look at that right hand side, all those teams got offensive weapons, except probably the Cowboys. They're probably the only team that really didn't get many offensive weapons.
Yeah.
But look at the Panthers, Titans, and Bears. They all added elite or middle tier to elite wide receivers to help.
Exactly. And now we're going to look at the strength of schedule for the playoffs. So I did this for weeks, I believe 14 through 17 is what I did because that's when our TFC takes place. So I think it's important to look at when you're in those contests, like overall as well. I don't think it's a bad idea if you're in standard league. So we'll just touch on this quickly. So the toughest schedule for quarterbacks for the playoffs is the Jags, Texans, Giants, Dolphins, and Rams. So again, some pretty high profile people in there. CJ Stroud, Tua, Matthew Stafford, Trevor Lawrence. Give me your quick thoughts on this, Logan.
Yeah, so when I look at this, the team that really jumps out to me is the Texans because they're going to have a week 14 bye, and then they're going to be facing the Dolphins, KC, and Baltimore for your 3 playoff games, 15 through 17. So it just kind of comes down to how those games turn out. They could very well turn into be shootout games because both teams will have elite offenses in all 3 of those matchups. But then you're also playing good defenses in the Chiefs, the Ravens. So it's just hard to tell how the game's going to unfold because they could easily be 50 plus points scored in all
Yep.
three of those games with those offenses. But again, we're having elite defenses. So it's hard to read into that in preseason.
The only common team for the toughest top five is the Dolphins. So that kind of scares me too a little bit. He kind of faded down the stretch too, if you remember right. And you'll see later on, they actually have a favorable schedule for running backs. So maybe they go a little bit more run heavy this year. The Texans, I agree though. I'm not going to fade CJ Stroud because of this. I still think, like you mentioned, he could be involved in shootout games. They still have a lot of talent on the offensive side of the ball. They added weapons as well. The Jags, though, they do kind of scare me. Trevor Lawrence is kind of underwhelmed to start his career. Now he has the toughest schedule for the playoffs. I don't know.
Alvin
I might be
Ridley.
fading him. Yep, exactly. Ridley's gone. So they added
Gabe Davis.
yeah, Gabe Davis. I'm sorry. I was spacing out on his name, but I'm not really too excited about him. I kind of think he's kind of, I don't know. Brian Thomas is there, the rookie, though, could be a help for that side of the ball. But I don't know. Trevor Lawrence kind of scares me. All right, let's talk about the easiest now. So you have the 49ers with the easiest playoff schedule, then Washington, Dallas, Broncos, Patriots. So the Broncos actually have one of the toughest for regular season, easiest for the playoffs. Kind of interesting how that plays out. But the Cowboys, common denominator on both lists, and then the 49ers with the easiest as well. So some high-profile people, Dak Prescott, Brock Purdy, with some favorable playoff schedules.
Yeah, we're going to see a switch in with running backs. So 49ers are going to have the easiest quarterback playoff strength of schedule, but they're going to have the hardest running back strength of schedule on the flip side. So they play the Rams, Dolphins, and Lions, all teams that kind of struggled a little bit in the secondary last year. So I think this definitely favors the 49ers. I'm still interested to see what they do at wide receiver. It sounds like they're going to be keeping Debo and Ayuk for right now because they didn't make a trade at the draft, but it'll be interesting to see if they keep both of them on their roster before the season starts.
Yeah, I agree. I'm intrigued by Dak Prescott after seeing these lists because I don't like their running game. They may be throwing the ball a ton. So he kind of one guy that's kind of moving up my draft boards after seeing these strength of schedules. All right, let's move on to running back now, Logan. So running back strength of schedule for the regular season. Packers had the easiest for the quarterback, toughest now for the running back. Then you have the Texans, Bucks, Raiders, and Seahawks. All right, give me your thoughts.
So that number one is going to be Josh Jacobs, brand new situation, and he's going to have the hardest strength of schedules. So that's definitely a big one to circle. Another one is also the Texans. We saw them on the QB strength of schedule, and we're also going to see them on the running back. Usually it's reversed with strength of schedules, but they just are going to be running into, again, three teams that have good defenses. They could also very well turn into shootout games, but they are on the strength of schedule for both quarterback and running back, which is pretty unusual with that. Again, on the right-hand side for strength of schedule, teams that don't have the best quarterback situation last year, teams that kind of struggled with quarterback situation, but for running backs, you get Najee Harris, Tony Pollard in a different situation. A Chain is shooting up drafts. He's going in the second round this year, and then you got Bijan Robinson with the Falcons. So that he's definitely a guy that I'm going to be circling in drafts going in the first round.
So I'm not too concerned about Josh Jacobs, even with the schedule, because I still have faith in him. But Joe Mixon kind of worries me because I didn't think he looked very good the past couple of years. His numbers kind of were inflated because of his work in the passing game and also getting all the goal line work and having next to no competition. So kind of worries me a little bit, this situation. And then Rashad White, too. I feel like, again, he just doesn't impress me that much. His fantasy numbers are so good because of his work in the passing game, but they added running back to the mix this year. They drafted, let me look up his name. I can't remember off the top of my head. It's Bucky Irving. So he's kind of a good pass catching back as well. So maybe he gets more work. Then Zamir White looks like the lead back in Las Vegas right now, I should say. But again, kind of question marks there. Alexander Madison's there too. So kind of a scary situation with that tough strength of schedule for those players. And you mentioned some of the easiest schedules. It's Pittsburgh, Tennessee, Dolphins, Falcons, Patriots. The thing for me is Bijan Robinson. I'm excited about him in year two with the new coaching staff that's going to look like they're going to get him the ball more consistently after last season's fiasco where they didn't really do that too well. Devon Chain, like you mentioned as well, really exciting to me. Then Tony Pollard, too, is kind of intriguing a little bit. And that situation there in Tennessee where he could be the lead back there. And then Pittsburgh, they have two backs that kind of both produced well, good fantasy numbers in Najee Harris and Jalen Warren. Then the Patriots are on the list too. And Ramondre Stevenson, I've kind of been getting him a lot of drafts lately. Feel like he's really slipped down draft boards because last season didn't have a very good year, but I could see him getting more work this year with the rookie quarterback likely at the mix. What's your thoughts on Stevenson?
Yeah, also Zeke's gone from that offense as well because Zeke kind of took over when Stevenson went down. So with Zeke out of the picture back
Yep.
on down, um, I think that Stevenson will go back to his workload that he had 2 years ago. And he was a solid fantasy running back. I don't think he's going to go out and get top 5 running back potential, but I think he's a good bet to be between 6 and 15 for running backs, which is kind of what you're just looking for where he's going in drafts with his current ADP. So I think it's just a solid, safe pick with going with Stevenson.
Yeah, I think he's a good buy low candidate. Let's look at the playoff strength of schedule now. You kind of mentioned it a little bit, but the 49ers have the toughest, then the Commanders, Texans, Steelers, Jets. So the Texans are on this list twice for toughest schedule for running back. So again, Joe Mixon kind of worries me. Christian McCaffrey has the toughest one for the playoffs for any running back, but you're not fading him. I'm not worried about that situation at all. Brian Robinson in Commanders kind of worries me a little bit with the new coaching staff. I'm still not convinced they're going to make him the workhorse back, but not much else to go with there at this point.
Well, so it's going to be interesting to see that backfield. Or if they're going to go a 50-50 split, or are they going to give Eckler a little bit more since they signed a year deal? I think those are two running backs that I'm kind of going to be fading just because we don't know their workload, along with them going in the first 10 rounds in drafts. Eckler did not look great last year.
No, he did not.
Yeah, so
I mean, they could end up just doing it similar to what they did with Gibson and Robinson last year, where Eckler's more the pass catching back. Robinson's going to get the early down work, but it's a situation I'm just not very high on unless you can get him very cheap.
yeah, yep, I kind of agree. It's kind of a running back that you have stored on your bench, and if there's a bye week for one of your star running backs, that's when you kind of plug them in, or if an injury happens.
I think the common theme here when we're looking at this, like this is more for the fringe players you're thinking about drafting, not the elite guys, but the guys going after those elite guys, because I still think they're going to produce. So, when it comes to these tough decisions in the middle rounds of your draft, I think you got to lean towards players with more favorable schedules. So this is why I think it's important to look at this ranking here. All right, with that said, let's talk about the easiest playoff schedules. You have the Falcons, Vikings, Saints, Rams, and Titans, the easiest playoff schedules for running back. So Bijan on here twice, Titans on here again as well. So I think Bijan is really intriguing to me because of both of these easy schedules for him.
Yep, for sure. It's definitely a guy that I'm going to be circling. He's going around 6 to 10 in drafts right now, first round potential. Also, their offense should be a lot better with the QB situation kind of covered. So I expect them to score a lot more, which is exactly what Robinson wants.
So the Rams, you have Kyron Williams, very exciting. I think his stock was super high until the draft happened. Then they took Blake Corum, kind of throwing everything in flux there a little bit. What's your thoughts on Williams now with Corum around?
Yeah, I still think Williams is going to be the number one, and Corum's going to kind of be their number two. I don't know if we're going to see the complete workload that Williams had last year. It seemed like every single time Rams offense stepped on the field, he was there. They used him in the passing game a ton. I think he was more of a hit or miss guy, and he hit 80% of the time last year. But I do think he takes a little bit of a step back, but I'm still feel comfortable drafting him. But his ADP is a little bit high for where I would feel safe taking him right now.
My big concern is the touchdowns because Corum's really good around the goal line, short yardage situations. Williams isn't the biggest back in the world. I know he scored a ton of touchdowns last year, so I wonder if the Rams make Corum the goal line back. That's going to mean his value is going to take a hit. But it's good to see as a favorable playoff schedule. All right, let's move on to receiver now, Logan. So the receiver regular season strength of schedule. Toughest: Broncos, Chargers, Dolphins, Chiefs, Raiders. So what sticks out to me is you have the top two teams have issues at receiver to begin with. I mean, Cortland Sutton's there, with the Chargers have a plethora of guys fighting for playing time there. So I don't know about you. I might just avoid these situations altogether after seeing this.
Yep, I'm the exact same way. It's going to be very hard to take anyone in that Chargers offense. I also think going back to quarterback, I am going to kind of be avoiding Justin Herbert just because I think that offense is going to be a little bit rough for the Chargers. I think their plan for this year is they shored up that offensive line, taking the first 5 picks. But again,
They
there's
still
just
don't have a they still don't have a running back that they can count on. They have Gus Edwards and J.K. Dobbins
they got
as their
which they just
fine.
continue more players.
Yeah, I just don't know if they can. I mean, it looks like Harbaugh wants to lean on that running game, and I just don't know if they have the horses to do that. Unfortunately, so that's going to be an intriguing situation. Then you have teams after that: Dolphins, Chiefs. They have some high-powered weapons on that side of the ball. Chiefs still have some questions with Rashee Rice, his legal woes up in the air, but they drafted Xavier Worthy, and they have Marquise Brown as well. Dolphins have the best receivers in the game. Arguably, the duo of Hill and Waddle might be the best in the game. So I'm not fading those guys because of this, but maybe their numbers aren't quite as gaudy as they could be.
Yep, I'm kind of the exact same way. You can't fade those top tier players, um, but when you look at the easiest kind of strength of schedule with the Packers, Cowboys, Bears, those are teams that we also saw with the easiest strength of schedule for QBs. The new ones
Yep.
that come into play, though, are the Giants and Cardinals. So those are 2 new teams that we did not see in the QB strength of schedule for the easiest. So those could be a little bit intriguing. We got
Someone has to lead them in targets, and you can get them later. Like Marvin Harrison's actually going pretty high, though. I've seen him go in the first 3 rounds of drafts. So,
going around round 3, and then we got like neighbors going like rounds 5 and 6
yeah,
ish. So those are definitely 2 players that can be intriguing, especially given the fact that they're going to have a top 5 easiest strength of schedule for wide
exactly.
receiver.
The one thing too, the Cowboys, CD Lamb. So I have him first overall. Do you have him first overall receiver?
I've got him first overall for wide receiver. I've actually seen him go first overall in a lot of drafts. Usually
Yeah.
it's between him and McCaffrey. Usually those kind of go 1, 2 in drafts. So I've actually seen Lamb go first overall in probably about 20% of the drafts. Just
So
depends who gets number 1
the
pick.
Packers, you have Jaden Reed, Dobbs, Christian Watson. So they got some guys that could produce big there as well. So that's another team I would definitely keep an eye on. It's especially in best ball formats. I like to stack those players, especially in like the championship, so you can maximize those points in the playoffs. So definitely something to be aware of with these receiver and quarterback strength of schedules. Let's look at the playoffs now real quick. And ironically, the playoffs is very similar as well to the regular season. Actually, it's the exact same. I may have done that wrong. I hate to say it. So I may have had that erroneous. But it looks like the Packers have another easy playoff schedule as well. So just something to keep in mind. Let's move on to tight end now, Logan, and talk about the tight end strength of schedule. I like to look at this one now because I feel like this is something that can be of good use because the tight end is definitely a position that can be exploited with defenses. So let's look at the toughest. It's the Bengals, Dolphins, Eagles, Commanders, and Texans. Bengals have Gesicki now as their tight end. They just have not produced well in that area in recent years. Dolphins kind of the same way, just don't utilize the tight end a lot. So that situation kind of sticks out to me where I'm just might be avoiding those guys if you want to take a chance on the Dolphins or the starter in Cincinnati with Gesicki. Dolphins have who did they signed Jonnu Smith this offseason. So again, I don't know. I'm not too high on them to begin with, and now I see this, and it kind of makes me want to just stay away from them.
Yeah, most of those teams on the left-hand side have new tight end situations. Again, with the Commanders, they got Zach Ertz. They also drafted a tight end of Ben Sinnott. So there's definitely a lot of new faces on that left side. 3 out of the 5 teams getting new tight ends this year. So usually it takes a little bit of connection with that quarterback to get into play. But also, again, with these strength of schedules, probably going to be looking to fade most of those teams.
Yeah,
Overall.
for sure. The Eagles, Dallas, Goddard is actually fine in my opinion. I still feel pretty good about taking him, but like you said, some question marks with those other teams to begin with, and then you have the strength of schedule. Dalton Schultz too. I could see him regressing a little bit. They added more firepower offensively there in Houston. So maybe he sees fewer targets, with Stephon Diggs now in the mix. So
Yeah,
that's a guy I might be fading a little bit because of that.
that's definitely a guy I'm going to be fading. You got Diggs, you got Tank Dell, you got Nico Collins, and then you also got Joe Mixon, who's known for passing or catching balls out of the backfield. So Dalton Schultz could be option number 5 in that offense, and you don't want a guy that's going to be the 5th number option on your team.
For sure. Yep. So I'll go back real quick to the wide receiver playoff strength of schedule. I typed up the wrong thing erroneously. I just want to make sure people know. So the toughest wide receiver playoff schedule is the Rams. Then it goes Jags, Chiefs, Giants, Dolphins. So the Giants have an easy one during the regular season, tough one for the playoffs. And then common themes, Chiefs and Dolphins on there for both the regular season and playoffs. And then easiest is Bears, Falcons, 49ers, Colts, Cowboys. Cowboys on there again. 49ers have a good QB and receiver one for the playoffs, so something to keep in mind. Again, the Cowboys on there twice as well, so CD Lamb's looking pretty good there for this season. All right, I just wanted to address that because I wrote the slide up wrong. I didn't want to mess people up there. All right, let's talk about the easiest. So you have the Raiders, Panthers, Vikings, Packers, and Titans for the easiest tight end strength of schedule. Brock Bowers, the tight end for the Panthers, the rookie, I'm blanking on his name right now, but I'm high on him for the season. It's Jatavion Sanders. So I kind of been taking him a lot late in drafts because I think he's going to end up starting. I know he wasn't a super high pick. He was a 4th-round pick, I believe, but he's better than Tremble there in Carolina. So he's one guy I'm kind of taking a chance on. Then you have the Vikings, Packers on this list as well. And then the Titans. So the Vikings, TJ Hawkinson's coming back from major injury, not be ready for the start of the season. Packers have the situation where they have the second-year tight end, Luke Musgrave. So some names on this list kind of intriguing to me, especially Bowers.
Yeah, there's a lot to kind of digest from the easiest strength of schedule. The big one that stands out to me is TJ Hawkinson. I don't know if I feel comfortable drafting him just coming back
I know.
from that huge injury. Also, you have that QB change. Gone from Kirk Cousins to JJ McCarthy. So there's a lot of concern with me and he's just going 6th or 7th tight end overall in drafts. Again, this is a guy that's coming back from a major surgery, might not be ready for the first couple of weeks into the year. So he's definitely a guy that I'm kind of avoiding in most of my drafts, even though he does have the 3rd easiest tight end schedule.
Yeah, I just did a best ball draft where I took Brock Bowers as my starter, and then I got Hawkinson 2 rounds later. So I felt good with that strategy because at least I have a decent starter, and even Bowers has some question marks. He's a rookie, and rookie tight ends sometimes don't do too well, although they kind of bucked that trend last year. So I think that's one way you can do it. It just depends where Hawkinson falls. So I still think he has some potential, but definitely injury is a concern. So that's the tight end strength of schedule. Let's look at the playoffs now. Falcons have the toughest, then the Bucks, Eagles, Cardinals, Jags. So no common theme for the toughest for playoffs and regular season, but you see the Falcons on there. Our guy Kyle Pitts lands the toughest one on there. What's your thoughts on Pitts this year with the new staff?
I'm kind of low on Pitts just because they got Kirk Cousins, who does use his tight end a lot. We saw that with TJ Hawkinson. So I think there is a lot more that can improve with Pitts this year from previous years. But again, I think I mentioned this in our last video. We say that every single year about Pitts.
It's true.
Falcons are a big team to circle, though. So they actually have the easiest schedule for wide receivers and running backs for the playoffs. But then you're going to have the hardest for tight ends. So there's going to be a lot of give and take with that team. It's something to circle that I just saw this morning is the Falcons are actually favored in, I think, 13 of their 17 games this year.
Wow.
Which is wild.
That's crazy. Yeah.
So they are projected, their over-under is at 9.5 wins, but they are favored in 13 games this year just by the Lions that have
interesting
to the game. So that's definitely a team that's going to kind of be circled that could make the playoffs if you're going to be starting out being favored in 13 of those games. So that was definitely my surprise big surprise that when I looked at the schedule.
So I misspoke. So the Eagles are on both the playoff and the regular season tight end list. So Dallas Getter has a tough schedule for both the playoffs and regular season. So one guy maybe again he can be up and down. So I don't know. You may want to be wary of drafting him. Trey McBride's one guy that's been super high in drafts this year. People love him because Cardinals have openings at receiver. They drafted Marvin Harrison, but after that, they don't have much. And McBride was a huge target down the stretch last year. So he has a tough playoff schedule, though. So that's something that you might want to keep in mind. But he's a guy that's going really high right now, Logan.
Yeah, he's definitely a guy I think I would feel very comfortable drafting. Again, like you mentioned, Cardinals really only have Marvin Harrison at wide receiver. They also lost Marquise Brown to the Chiefs. So there's a lot of openings for targets in that offense. And Trey McBride put up huge numbers last year out of nowhere. No one really saw that coming from him. And he was putting up 20 plus fantasy points, it seemed like every other week.
Yeah, he was a playoff winner down the stretch, definitely. Evan Ingram, the same way, and they're fifth on this list. I'm still not. I don't think I'm worried about him too much because of this. I still think he's going to have a good season. So let's look at the easiest now, Logan. You got the Chargers, 49ers, Titans, Vikings, Broncos. Vikings on this list twice. Chargers have the easiest. Donald Parham's probably their starter. I'm not too excited about him. I mean, I guess with the openings they have at receiver, they have Hayden Hurst there as well, but I think Parham's the better receiving option of the two. So might want to take a chance on him late. You have George Kittle too. He's always a good player. Again, a lot of mouths to feed in that offense, but a good playoff schedule, and he can produce big. Okonkwo in Tennessee is their starting tight end. TJ Hawkinson on here again. And then the Broncos, they have Greg Dulcich likely starting. I don't know. You never know with that coaching staff. It seems like they still like Adam Troutman there because of his connections with New Orleans and their head coach from past years. So what's your thoughts on the easiest playoff strength?
The Broncos are just a team I'm avoiding in general. I think they're going to rely heavily on their run game this year, especially with Bo Nix coming into that offense. The one team that I'm circling is going to be the 49ers with George Kittle with that second easiest playoff schedule. So that's definitely a team that I'm going to circle. As I mentioned, their three games that they play are going to be against the Rams, Dolphins, and Lions for weeks 15 through 17. So that's a good schedule. Those are teams I mentioned that have not the best secondary. That's why we saw the 49ers up there for wide receiver. Also, again, with tight end. So I think those could be very high scoring games, all three of those. So 49ers are probably the team that I'm going to be circling the most based off the schedule.
Here's my question to you about the Broncos. I don't know who's going to lead that backfield. Do you? I mean, Javonte Williams is there. He's kind of underwhelmed. He looked great his rookie year, but it doesn't seem like that coaching staff sold him. Then yet got Jaleel McLaughlin. It seems like they might be higher on him. So I don't know who to take there. I agree with you. I think they could be really run heavy, but I'm just not sure what back at this point.
Yeah, when Javonte Williams went down, McLaughlin kind of stepped up, and he had a couple of good games. But when they kind of put him in the secondary role behind Williams, he didn't see as much action as we probably expected last year. So there's a lot that's going to probably be decided in training camp between those two again. But I think I'm just going to be completely avoiding everyone on the Broncos.
That's probably not a bad strategy.
With them, I don't really feel safe drafting anyone. I really don't even feel safe drafting their number one wide receiver in Sutton. So that's just.
I feel like I've taken Sutton a lot in the past, but I don't know if I am this year. I like the fact they don't have much else besides him, so that might be one thing. Maybe in a best ball format, I feel better about him. But overall, you're right. That Denver offense is kind of scary. I don't know how they won as many games as they did last year. I think they were they 8-9 or 9-8? I can't.
Yeah, they started off very slow. They did not have a good start to the season, but they kind of picked up a couple wins. They almost snuck into the playoffs.
Yeah,
last weeks. It was
exactly, and that was after benching Russell Wilson. Who knows? All right, I guess they know what they're doing there, and they're winning games somehow. So that's our schedule preview for the season. Our fantasy strength of schedule preview. A lot of fun to talk with you, Logan, about this. I will do in-depth articles on this as well. That'll be up in our draft guide, which officially launches June 1st, but you'll see a complete breakdown with everything on there, including the numbers, all the team schedules, fantasy strength of schedules for each position. So it's always a lot of fun to do, to crunch these numbers and go over them and see how they impact everyone for the coming season. Logan, thanks again for joining me. I really appreciate it. Always fun talking to you.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Jeff.
And thanks to everybody out there for watching this video this week. I really appreciate that as well. And don't forget to sign up for games on our site. Drafts going off around the clock at this point. All different formats, all different price options, all different contests here at RealTime Fantasy Sports. Just go to rtsports.com, click on that Money League link. You can see all the leagues on there. Again, thanks again for joining me. Good luck drafting out there this year, and good luck this coming season. This has been Jeff Paur with RealTime Fantasy Sports. Have a great day.